This video is looking at language analysis and close reading skills, and in order to do this we're going to look at a short piece of prose written by a Russian writer called Gorky, who is looking at his impressions of New York in 1922. So first of all, you need to kind of have a read of this. I put a question up there just to focus our minds that we're looking for interesting descriptive language to communicate his feelings about the city. But generally, first of all, take a moment to read the extract. Now, the app that I've put this through has done horrible things to the formatting, but please take it is written as prose. I think the paragraph breaks are fairly obvious, but we'll pick those up as we go through. But just pause this video and just have a read of it for yourself. And then when you finish that page, here's the second page. Okay, so looking at this then, first thing, I would look through and see if there are any words that you are unfamiliar with or that you really do need to kind of stop and have a think about. And at this stage, if you've got the access to the internet or, heaven forbid, a dictionary, you can just take the time to look up the words, because I really find that using define and then putting the word in on Google generally sort of throws up something that maybe I hadn't considered about the odd word here and there. So it's worth kind of just checking on something, even if you think you've got a feel of the context of it, because that's how you're adding to your vocabulary. Other than that, I'd start to go through and reading it and doing that kind of action where you're actively reading to start off with. So I might kind of, if I'm actively reading, pick up the idea that, okay, I can see that this is the city, this is New York. These are both short, right? I'm maybe not going to think of anything other than that at the moment that's short sentences, because I'm going to compare the impact of those short sentences with the longer sentences maybe later on. Got 20-storied houses, dark, soundless skyscrapers stand on the shore. And I know that, soundless is maybe unusual because skyscrapers stand on the shore square, lacking in any desire to be beautiful. Bulky, ponderous buildings tower gloomily and drearily. Haughty pride in its height, ugliness felt in each house, no flowers at the windows, no children to be seen. Okay, so all I'm doing there is kind of picking up at things that I might want to then expand on and thinking about how I'm going to expand on them. Well, here we've got short, blunt sentences. And rather than just pointing that out, I want to think about the effect of them. So because this is a kind of introduction and it's short sentences, I'm going to say that this is very kind of unadulterated. This is not dressed up in any way. This is very plain and direct as a presentation of this city. It's largely monosyllabic. Okay, and I say largely because city has obviously got two syllables in it. Okay, so monosyllabic, largely monosyllables. And we've got this is sense of repetition there, that repetition called anaphora, the idea of using the same word or words at the start of successive sentences or clauses. So we've got this kind of presentation that it's not just any city, it's New York, and it's blunt and direct. And that leads us into the kind of size of things, 20-storied houses. And these are houses, maybe not homes, okay? And I'm going to question mark that because I want to come back to that at the end of this paragraph. We have dark, soundless skyscrapers stand on the shore. And I'm starting to notice there's quite a bit of sibilance going on here. So underlining it. And the minute I've spotted the sibilance, I don't want to just point it out. I want to think, well, what's the effect of it? And we've got sibilance talking about silence. So we have got that kind of emphasis on the kind of hush or whispers or quiet idea. We've got as well this idea of a little bit of personification coming in. Not entirely kind of hugely, because they're standing, they are standing, that's not strictly personification. But the idea that they're soundless, they're silent, kind of is all leading towards personifying them, which we get in more detail here. They are lacking in any desire to be beautiful. So they're kind of actively almost kind of shrugging off that idea of being attractive, which leads us then to, there's another one, the plosive alliteration there. Okay, so we've got plosive alliteration, those P's and B's, giving that sense of bulk, giving that sense of size, the idea of ponderous buildings, the kind of intimidating nature of them, next to the sibilance here of the silence there. And again, we've got our personification here, gloomily and drearily. These are not kind of happy places. This is not a positive image. And the idea that these towers have a haughty pride, if you are haughty, you are kind of rudely dismissive, you think you're above everybody else, you're kind of offhand with them. And it's ugliness felt in each house. So this idea of ugliness becomes pervasive, okay? If you pervade something, then you run through it all. It kind of is everywhere. If something's pervasive, it's everywhere. So you could say, no matter where they tried to go, the bad smell was pervasive, or the feeling of gloom was pervasive. And this ugliness is there. And that leads us into this lack, that New York is almost defined by absence of things. Okay, no flowers at the windows, no children to be seen. Now, if we stop for a moment and we think, what do these things symbolize? Okay, so, no flowers at the windows, but what are people signifying when they put flowers at their windows? Well, I think it's kind of pride in where they live, enjoyment of where they live, a kind of happiness. So the lack of that gives you a message about how this city is portrayed. And again, if there are no children, then they're either being kept inside, or actually people are not settling there with their families to start off with, or people aren't starting families there. So in both kind of instances, we have this idea that this New York is not a place for enjoyment or new life. Okay, so think about, defined by the absence of these two things. Now, in our next paragraph, and it's just this bit in terms of the formatting, we start to kind of see a different kind of description of the city. The city seems like a vast jaw with uneven black teeth. It breathes clouds of black smoke into the sky and puffs like a glutton suffering from his obesity. So first of all, going to check kind of vocab-wise. If you don't know anything about the 7 deadly sins, stop now and go and Google the 7 deadly sins, because they come up loads in literature and ideas, and it's a worthwhile bit of general knowledge to have. Okay, then you will understand gluttony, and you'll be able to kind of feed it into this metaphor. If you are obese, you are extremely overweight. And then we'll go and start looking at the different connotations of this image. So we know that we've got a simile here, but we're not just going to stop at saying it's a simile. We're going to look at what the city's being compared to, that specific detail. So if something is like a vast jaw, we can comment on vast and we can comment on jaw. So vast, kind of huge, intimidating size, endless, massive. And then a jaw being kind of almost the mechanical part of eating. Your jaw just kind of goes up and down when you're eating. And this is starting to set up this image of the city as a kind of vast eating or huge eating machine, right? There's that sense of mechanism almost with the jaw, with uneven black teeth, uneven being kind of, out of place, not uniform. Black teeth or rotten teeth. So there is a sense of corruption and decay. That's added to the clouds of black smoke. Now, we know that, in the literal kind of description, or the thinking about the city literally, this black smoke is pollution kind of being pumped into the atmosphere, but the city is breathing it. So the city now has a jaw and breathes, and black teeth. And it puffs, so it has this laboured breathing. So you have a sense of kind of indulgence, I suppose kind of culpability. If you are culpable, right, you are kind of in some way to blame. And here, anyway, the language that Gorky is using is establishing this city as having gorged itself, having stuffed itself, and is now suffering as a result. It can't breathe properly. So you've got this idea of something really straining and struggling, but also that underlying idea that maybe this city has done it to itself because of how it's treated the people who are living there. And we'll come on to that in a moment as the metaphor develops. Because our writer kind of next on says, entering the city is like, so we've got that simile, getting into a stomach of stone and iron, a stomach that has swallowed several million people and is grinding and digesting them. So straight away you've got this language of consumption and digestion. And the people are the resource. So if you think, if something's eaten, the energy from it is used, and then, without putting it kind of too impolitely, the kind of rest of the useless stuff is flushed away. So people are being used as a resource. This stomach is stone and iron, and both of those things are hard and unforgiving and solid and unemotional. So you've got this kind of very, very difficult atmosphere. And we know the stomach is stone and iron because it's buildings. We're talking about this city and all of the kind of way it's made, but it's also kind of devoid, so lacking any emotion. And the scale of the consumption is also worth talking about. It's not just one or two people, it's swallowed, it's kind of disappeared, consumed several million people, and is grinding and digesting them. So that present tense and these kind of present participles are saying that this is an ongoing process. The inhabitants of this city, there's no escape for them. As they live there, they're being kind of used as food by this awful city. And then we move on away from the simile into a metaphor. The street is a slippery, greedy throat. So we're kind of extending that idea to take the roadway, the kind of thoroughfare, somewhere we travel, and the writer's making it that kind of idea of somewhere you travel through or down. And the slipperiness of it makes it even worse because it's kind of like a one-way journey. Once you're here, you're sliding down that street into the stomach. And the idea that it's personified, the greed of it, it's hungry for you. So there's a sense of kind of growing threat about this city. And in its depth, so the kind of deep darkness are dark bits of the city's food, living people. So just in case you hadn't got the idea, this city is living off human bodies. Now this is, I think, a new paragraph. So imagine that's a new paragraph. It's just the formatting's messed up. So everywhere, overhead, underfoot, alongside, we have that triple. And it goes kind of over, under, with. So this idea, it's pervasive and inescapable, right? You can't get away from it. There's a clang of iron, so the onomatopoeia with that. And then the personification of the iron exulting in its victory. Let me just underline that properly. Because exultation is kind of like almost a religious joy or religious celebration. So the iron is personified, and as you're, disappearing into this city, it's iron that's celebrating its triumph. Because it's been awakened to life and animated, so made to move by the power of gold. It casts its web about man, strangles him, sucks his blood and brain, devours his muscles and nerves, and grows, resting upon voiceless stone. So the idea here that iron, celebrating its victory, has been brought to life by the power of gold. Think about what that represents. You know, you've got wealth and money. And then as a result, it kind of becomes sort of this organic, alive thing, which is entrapping people like some sort of spider predator. You know, it has a web, it strangles, it sucks. These are all kind of images of consumption and usage. You know, it is really getting its energy from killing people slowly, from feeding on them. You've got that repetition of grows and grows, kind of to emphasize the kind of never-ending spread, kind of the irresistible spread to it. And then this idea of, again, voiceless stone spreading the links of its chain. These are all images of kind of emotionless draining and use. Think about, you know, this is the reason why there are no children there. This is the reason why, you know, there are no flowers in the windows. Everybody is being used up to utter exhaustion. And then this final paragraph is kind of funny because the city becomes sort of grotesque. Okay, grotesque means kind of awfully horrible in an almost kind of stylized way. We have our locomotives, our trains, similarly, enormous worms wiggle along. You know, that would be funny if it didn't now have the connotations of kind of almost like worms feeding off something, almost maggoty feeding off something, dragging cars behind them. Horns of automobiles quack like fat ducks. You know, everything about this city is kind of overfed. And we know that it's the people that it's feeding on. The electric wires hum drearily, so we've got that personification there. And again, that adverb, the drearily, kind of that it's dull, it's tedious. Stifling air, it's kind of not quite a true oxymoron, but it's got that kind of paradoxical idea to it. Air is normally fresh air, you know, you're breathing it, it's life-giving. Whereas if something's stifling you, it's stopping you breathing, it's kind of really smothering you. And we know that the air can't throb. You know, the air is not tangible. So, you know, we can't see it pulsate. But it has the thousands of strident. So strident is very kind of purposeful, very loud, in your face kind of noise. So the suffocating air has got those strident sounds. It's absorbed as a sponge absorbs moisture. So the idea that the air is becoming almost something physical that's helping everything oppress you. It's pressing down upon this grimy city, soiled, so dirty with the pollution. And the air hangs motionless among the high soot-covered walls. So we started with this kind of idea of intimidation and unpleasantness, and we end with a kind of grotesque parody of a city that is using its people, that is feeding off and absorbing its people, and is making them live in this suffocating, choking air. I mean, you can go back and you can kind of find things like the alliteration here to link the kind of, you know, connect that wiggling noise. We've got the kind of quack like fat ducks, electric, that consonance of that sharp K, giving you a kind of abrupt kind of idea of the automobiles moving. We can pick up the sibilance maybe of the strident sounds, has absorbed, as a sponge absorbs. Oh, I'm not going to do that there. Absorbs moisture. You know, the kind of sticky feel of the sibilance there. So generally, you know, I wouldn't like to be in this version of New York. What we're going to do then is think about how you would write that up, how you'd get to the point of saying, okay, Gorky presents New York as, and remember to get your clear topic sentences, your theories, and then to really expand them out with that detail. Don't repeat what's in the quotations. Try and be looking at your techniques and bring something to each quotation. Do your expert reader thing. point out something to the person reading your answer that they can't necessarily get themselves by just reading this. Okay, I hope that's helpful. Bye now.